Books on library shelves have faced growing challenges in the last few years when using this Banned Books Week to highlight some of the titles removed. A social media post from Andover Public Library resulted in a lot of attention, but also threats. The library is now taking a break from social media. Sean Logging talked to the library about what they're facing. Sean?
Mike, the book that led to so much contention in the comments of the post is called Genderqueer. Last year, the American Library Association says that the nonfiction memoir was the most challenged book in the United States. It deals with issues of gender identity. The Andover Public Library director, Tom Taylor, tells me people were having legitimate conversations about the book in the comments section of the post, but attention on that post grew well beyond the Andover community. They were eventually seeing comments and getting messages that included threats of destroying the library's books and pictures of wood chippers. Because they were worried about just how far those comments were going, they took down the post. The climate for public and school libraries has become more challenging the last few years. The American Library Association's Office of Intellectual Freedom says more than 1,250 attempts to ban books or remove library materials happened last year. Through August of this year, it was nearly 700.
It's a sad state of affairs nationwide. There are people that had legitimate concerns about these books, and we have a policy to reconsider titles that we have, but their voices were drowned out as well in sort of the extremist views. And yeah, it's sad to see.
Tom tells me that the library has also been receiving a lot of support after this incident, both from the community and from libraries from around Kansas. Tom tells me as a public library, they're here for everyone, all people, all ages.